2 preseason games, 2 beatdowns on the boards, and the same issue appears each and every time. Every driving lane that Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell attempt to use is blocked by the Indiana Fever's forwards' inability to shoot from the outside, which eliminates the need for defenders to guard them. Coach Steph White is aware that the Fever are effectively giving opponents a blueprint for shutting them down. However, Justine Pissott, a 6 feet 4 inches sharpshooter who is meant to help the front office solve this, is now hurt and allegedly, implying that the team's narrative isn't entirely true. No one is reporting how messy this issue is, and we are delving into every aspect of it. The roster construction errors, the preseason catastrophes, and whether Cameron Brink might intervene to improve this roster before the season are all crucial. Do you believe the front office of the Indiana Fever is making mistakes this season? Tell me in the comments section below. The Indiana Fever seem to be up to their customary antics. I told you all that there was something suspicious about Justine Pissott's injuries. It appears that she has been venting on social media. Against Indiana, Dallas pulled down 45 rebounds. The Fever took 26. Take a moment to consider that a 19-rebound deficit is not the result of one team trying harder or being fortunate on a few bounces. This kind of disparity arises when one team is designed for the current style of basketball and the other one isn't. This squad was defeated 45-26 on the boards yesterday because of Aaliyah Boston's absence from the roster. We wouldn't have won many competitive games like that if you included AB's lifetime average of 8 rebounds. Instead, we would have been dominated 45-34. Is it possible for us to just outperform some lower-tier clubs during the regular season? I'm positive. However, when we encounter the world's Las Vegas Aces, Atlanta Dreams, and New York Liberties, the Los Angeles Sparks in the world, we must now consider whether we are tall enough to compete against some of these superior teams. The fact that this wasn't an isolated incident exacerbates the situation. Before Dallas had a chance, the New York Liberty accomplished the exact same thing on the boards in the opening preseason game. They each entered Indiana's paint and dominated it despite having 2 distinct teams, rosters, and play styles. If you are defeated on the glass by one team, you can put the burden on bad nights or mismatches. Your roster is telling you something when 2 teams defeat you on the glass in consecutive games in precisely the same manner. And Monique Billings, Maisha Hines-Allen, Michaela Timson, and Dyrus Dantas make up Indiana's current frontcourt rotation. Furthermore, none of those 4 accomplish anything to compel a defender to move away from the hoop when Aaliyah Boston is sidelined. From the outside, none of them pose a threat, thus opposing. They never need to be chased to the 3-point line by bigs. This means that whenever a shot is made, Indiana's forwards are still figuring out where to go while the opposing team centers and forwards are already positioned close to the rim, ready to grab or bounce. It has nothing to do with rotations. When your entire front court is positioned close to the basket and no one is dragging defenders away from it, this is what occurs. Whether it was the Indiana Fever's preseason or not, they were completely destroyed by what we think will be among the worst teams within the league. However, I must admit that it didn't go well when it was starters versus starters. It didn't work out very well. Today, a lot of fans are shouting from the top of the mountain what they have been saying ever since the draft. Last night, we were completely destroyed on the boards. Destroyed. 7 guards, the most of whom are under 6 feet tall, are part of Indiana's anticipated 12-person roster. Therefore, when the Fever send a forward to the glass, they lack the size and length to prevail in those games against teams who have big players who are capable of grabbing rebounds. The Liberty physically shifted Indiana's rotation by using their length at the forward positions. And then Dallas came in and did it a different way, using speed and persistent effort to grab offensive boards and turn them into second-chance points that hindered the Fever from ever stringing together a run. After the game, Steph White also didn't skirt the issue. She specifically identified the areas that burned them as transition defense and defensive rebounding. And the displeasure in how she talked about it wasn't the kind of frustration you hear when a coach thinks her squad just has to perform better. It seemed like a coach who recognizes a systemic problem, one that effort and video sessions won't fully address.
And she's right.
I felt like we were disconnected on the defensive end of the court. We weren't moving when the ball moved. And then we were standing watching. I mean, they crushed us against the glass. I thought we got out toughed. I believed we received, I thought that their levels of effort, or levels of urgency, I should say, were different than ours. And we are unable to have it. The short-term scenario is made worse by Boston's absence, without a doubt. However, even if she returns in good health, the spacing. Boston is a conventional inside player. Thus, the issue persists. The post is caught by her. She completes around the perimeter. She uses internal interaction to work. She excels in every aspect of it. She needs space to accomplish that well. Additionally, no other player on Indiana's front court is currently removing a single defender from the paint to allow her that space. When Boston snags a post entry, but Boston isn't playing poorly because the defense is already collapsing before she can make her initial move. That's because her teammates don't give defenders an excuse to be anywhere except where they are. The Fever's desire to have this short squad is being mentioned by many. There is no length on this team. Not one. Pad, Justine. She might not even be able to join the team. We're beginning to question whether Stephanie. Does White want her to join the team? This is it. It was a 9,580 game, of course. 45 to 26 rebounds. Therefore, you must comprehend what a stretch four does, and why Indiana's current forwards are essentially the antithesis of that in order to fully comprehend why Justine Pat is so important to the squad, and why the Cameron Brink discussion is gaining traction. A power forward who can stride out to the three-point line and make the shot is known as a stretch four. Additionally, the paint expands up when a defender has pursued them. That's all. That's the entire idea. One large defender is forced to leave the basket by a player who is positioned beyond the arc. Suddenly, a lane appears where none before existed. A post-up chance where defense assistance was previously available. There ought to be someone stretching the floor at 4 and 5. Okay, that's the reason I say all of that. The WNBA is literally becoming the best, so you need someone at 4 and 5 to stretch that floor.
NBA.
Man, it really is. Bigs that are incapable of shooting are simply too talented to be on the same floor. Too much skill for it. As we witnessed last night and last year, the defense can simply jam that paint. It will keep happening. Because of who their two best players are, that idea is more important to Indiana than nearly anything else at the moment. Clark poses the greatest threat when Boston is most effective when she catches in the post with one defender rather than two, and she can get downhill with space in front of her. A forward who draws a huge amount away from the basket is necessary for both of those. In the absence of it, Boston catches with assistance already in her face before she can drop the ball on the floor as Clark drives into bodies. None of the typical big men, Billings, Hines, Allen, Timpson, and Dantas, have a perimeter shot that worries opponents. Thus, their designated defenders simply remain in the paint. They are not required to relocate. They can position themselves exactly where Boston needs space to function and where Clark wants to attack. Additionally, since no one on the floor is forcing them to leave, Indiana is powerless to stop it. Clark drove into traffic that shouldn't have been that heavy considering the matchup against the Liberty. And it wasn't because the security forces in New York were adept at preventing intrusion. The reason for this was that New York's forwards never had to move. Thus, they were present when Dallas was playing. It occurred once more.
Different staff, same outcome.
And I must tell you, dude, I was like, wow, we have another 61 in our front court when I saw it. Look, family. I didn't understand this, okay? She is not a floor stretcher.
She's
powerful. She dives into the paint. I take it she gets filthy? I understand all of it. She is able to keep Caitlin safe. I assure you that I am aware of all of it. But eventually the talent becomes a concern. We need to consider what the Indiana Fever actually require. You truly have another Natasha Howard scenario, except it's shorter. The floor is covered in Hines. This is extremely annoying because Clark gives opposing defenses the exact spacing issue that Indiana's forwards don't give anyone. Because leaving Clark open from anywhere beyond half court is essentially giving Indiana points, defenses must chase her everywhere on the perimeter. She demands attention, but Indiana's forwards make no demands of the big men on the other squad. Thus, the floor is extremely unbalanced. Indiana protects the perimeter while Indiana's own paint gets clogged. The struggles of Mitchell, Boston, and Clark don't ruin the Fever's offense. The roster's design places defenders precisely where Indiana's greatest players need them to be, which is why it's broken. And without a different type of forward on the court, no amount of work or play calling can resolve that. In the second round, Indiana's front staff selected a player expressly for this position. A Vanderbilt native who is 6 feet 4 inches and has a 7-foot wingspan. Additionally, they are already mistreating her in some way. Tall enough to compete with some of these superior squads. We need more, according to the response I see, and I have been saying this all off-season. More size is required. We require a sufficient backup to AB. We require a power forward of the first caliber. Additionally, the media and the Indiana Fever are covering up Justine Pissott's injuries.
But Justine
Declares, "Don't believe everything the media says." Justine Pissott is 6 feet 4 inches with a 7-foot wingspan. She shot threes at a high rate coming out of Vanderbilt, and Indiana drafted her in the second round specifically because they needed a forward who could pull defenders away from the basket. That's not a coincidence. That's a front office identifying their own problem and drafting the solution. She's a very difficult matchup. She's a nightmare. Your guard is on her, and you try to deny her on the perimeter so she can go down on the low block and post you up. You put your big kid on her so she can't post you up, and she's going to buy you off the dribble. At Vanderbilt, Pat wasn't just standing in the corner waiting for kickouts. She guarded multiple positions because her length allowed her to cover ground that shorter forwards simply couldn't cover, and her wingspan causes serious problems for WNBA forwards who aren't. She brings shooting and defensive versatility in one player, which is exactly what Indiana's front court is lacking right now. Her debut against the Liberty made that clear almost instantly. Defenders had to step out and guard her on the perimeter. At that point, there was more space near the basket for Boston to work and for Clark to attack.
That's not a small thing.
That's the whole offensive concept that Indiana has been lacking in 2 preseason games, and a rookie demonstrated it in her first WNBA game. A 64-foot shooter is tough, really, really tough, especially for a 6 feet 4 inches shooter who doesn't see contests. The trigger from just Nimbat is so quick that it's kind of crazy. And then, obviously, this one here, she doesn't even watch the game. That could have been an M1. That could have been an M1 right there. There were some impressive shots. What did Indiana do with a player who demonstrated her worth in the first game? They put her on a development contract rather than a regular roster deal, which puts Pat in a completely different contract category with a 14-day exclusivity window before other teams can start pursuing her. Kelly Krakoff and Amber Cox, the 2 people in charge of this organization, made the decision to place a forward in the most vulnerable roster spot after seeing how well she performed in her first game. This isn't an unidentified front office decision floating around in the abstract. Her range is unlimited at 6 feet 4 inches. You know, she's just a tremendous shooter. Her passion for excellence is what most impresses me about her. She has improved both her offense and defense. The quotes are deliberate because she has been posting. I can't tell you the last time I've been out. I feel like all my friends tell me to go out with them, and I just am never out. I'm always in the gym getting shots up and watching film. I love it. And now Pat is injured. A rookie on a development contract doesn't typically go public with that kind of energy unless something feels wrong about how she's being handled. I feel like the Indiana Fever is lying about Justine Pissott's leg injury. She's responding to the narrative being put out about her situation on social media in a way that strongly suggests the injury story isn't the full picture and she's not being vague about it. I believe that they are keeping her hidden because they don't want to give her a full contract to be on the 12-player roster. Instead, they want her to be on that developmental contract. Additionally, I believe that after the first game against New York, they realized that if this girl continued to log minutes in these games, someone would want to sign her. If Pissott ends up signing a standard contract with another team because Indiana moved too slowly, too cautiously, or simply didn't prioritize locking her in, that's not a bad break. That's the feverish front office giving a stretch four to a rival while their own team is losing by 19 points and watching Clark drive into the packed paint every possession. The coaching staff of another team will figure out how to use a 6 feet 4 inches shooter with a 7-foot wingspan, and Indiana will watch from the other bench. The new CBA's development contract structure gives teams flexibility, but that flexibility goes both ways, and Indiana appears to be using it in a way that protects the organization's options while exposing PSD. Guard depth doesn't solve a front court spacing issue. You can't stack one position and ignore another and expect the math to work out. Raven Johnson has been genuinely exciting as a defensive force and secondary playmaker, and as a result, the guard rotation looks much better than it did a year ago. Let's look at what Justine Pissott had to say about this injury because they're hiding her. Let's not always believe the media with the puzzle face. I just got to keep it real. She might be saying, hey, we can't believe what the Fever is putting out there in the media, though I'm not sure exactly what she means by this.
I'm all right.
I am able to have fun. She has already emerged. She emerged and informed us. No developmental contract is important to me. Cameron Brink is a stretch 4 with WNBA experience, and Pat's skill set directly unlocks what Clark and Boston can do at their best. The way Indiana is currently handling her looks less like a roster plan and more like an organization that doesn't fully recognize what it's sitting on. She can rebound. Brink shares Pat's profile in that she can defend multiple positions and hit threes at a rate that forces opposing bigs to actually follow her out to the perimeter. However, Brink already has experience with the pro game and is aware of the speed and physicality of WNBA bigs, which is important when trying to address a roster issue before a real season begins. Is Cameron Brink available? Is there a Damaris Dantas and a first-round pick for Cameron Brink available? Is there a Damaris Dantas in 2 of the first rounds for Cameron Brink? Is there a Damaris Dantas and Michaela Timpson trade for Cameron Brink? I'm just curious. I'd take Cam Brink as a backup 5. But are you prepared for something even better? Cam Brink at the 5. AB at the 4. The trade talk surrounding Brink's arrival in Indiana isn't just conjecture. It's a direct reaction to a roster gap that 2 preseason games expose, and Brink almost perfectly fills that gap by addressing size, spacing, and rebounding all at once rather than fixing one thing and leaving 2 others broken. For Clark in particular, Brink's changes are straightforward. When a forward with 3-point shooting ability is on the floor, the defense must send a big out to guard her, which results in 1 fewer body in the paint when Clark attacks downhill. A contested layup turns into an open one. A drive that now ends with Clark getting fouled because there's nowhere to go suddenly becomes a kick out to a shooter, and Clark doesn't currently have that option because no one on Indiana's front court pulls anyone away from the basket. If she were to play force, AB would be considering the majority of the league's power forwards. On defense, having a true rim protector like Cam Brink would help us. In terms of rebounding, having another big next to AB would help clean up the glass. Cameron Brink running the floor with a pass from CC. Ooh, I like to see that. For Boston, it's even more direct. Boston is best at catching in the post when there is one defender on her and room to move, but at the moment, she's catching with help defense already sliding over before she can make her first move because Indiana's other forwards give opposing bigs no reason to leave. Brink's presence on the floor changes that the moment she checks in because her defender must follow her. Suddenly, Boston has the space. She needs to actually go to work. However, adding Brink isn't free. There are trade costs, cap implications, and Indiana would need to move pieces to make the numbers work. Therefore, it's not just a phone call and a handshake, but the alternative is to watch a team built around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston get out-rebounded by 19 points once more. We need more size. Maisha Hines-Allen is not big, but she is strong, thick, and not tall. The front office needs to make some cuts and trades quickly while they wait for development contracts to sort themselves out. That was painful to watch. I hope CC is not re-injured. If you can't find some rebounds, there won't be many wins this season. She isn't a rebounder. The Wings game actually gave Indiana a blueprint for what they're lacking. Dallas relied on outside shooting, guard depth, and pace to create easy looks, and Paige Buckers dropped 20 points in part because Dallas had the spacing to allow her to play freely. That's the exact environment Indiana wants to create for Clark, but they can't right now because the front court won't cooperate. If Indiana trades for Brink and locks Pat into a real standard contract and keeps Boston healthy. The starting lineup appears genuinely different, with Clark and Mitchell running the backcourt, Boston and Brink up front, Pat coming off the bench as a floor-stretching forward who can also guard bigger wings due to her length, and Raven Johnson coming off the bench as a defensive disruptor and secondary playmaker, making that rotation deep in a way the Fever haven't been in years. If you keep De'Aria's stance and cut, Justine Pissott, you guys are so incredibly inept.
Woo.
Fire Stephanie White and the Fever front office. It's going down. I hope Cece wasn't hurt again. And you want to sell tickets? Nobody wants to see Stephanie White perform. Clark is already on an MVP trajectory. Boston is a real force when she's healthy. Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexi Hall give Indiana more than enough shooting and perimeter toughness to compete with anyone in the league, but none of that firepower translates into victories. If defenders are able to plant themselves in the paint and never move because Indiana's forwards don't make them, this offense will either open up or remain stuck at the 4 position, which it is at the moment. Indiana has a front court that 2 different teams just destroyed in back-to-back preseason games, along with Clark, Boston, Mitchell, and a coaching staff that runs a modern offense. Pat is either going to be the player that another team signs while Indiana continues to be out-rebounded by 19, or she's going to be the moment Krauskov and Cox got serious about fixing the 4 position. Do you think the Indiana Fever front office is fumbling this season? Let me know. To ensure you never miss anything, click the video on the screen, like, subscribe, and enable all alerts in the comments section below. We'll see you in the next.